Hello, listeners of the Versations podcast.
Hi. My name is. Hi. My name is Broadway Classic.
Let's hear it.
Welcome back to another episode of the podcast. Thank you for tuning in. And if this is your first time clicking on the show, well then, here's a little extra greeting of hello to you. Hello. I'm your host, Bri, like the cheese. How are you doing? How have you been able to stay creative and inspired this week? I hope from the bottom of my cheesy heart that your artistic juices are flowing out of some faucet, and I hope that the rainfall of artistic juices shall visit you soon. Let's keep the arts alive throughout this pandemic, and one way we can do that is by talking about art. This podcast does exactly that. I sit down with creators of all kinds, and we discuss the ins and outs of upcoming or recent projects, as well as share perspectives as artists, and maybe have a few laughs along the way. This episode is the penultimate episode of season 3. I will be taking a break from podcasting after next week's episode, but please make sure you are subscribed and followed on your preferred platform to be updated on when season 4 will begin. I don't know when that's going to happen, but maybe soon. Okay, my guest this week for our second last episode of the season is Colleen Snell. Colleen is an educator, choreographer, collaborator, outside eye, fight director, and performer, and the co-founder of Frog in Hand. She is a truly gifted human in all ways, and our conversation sort of jumped around a bit. We talked karsts, radio plays, and even tried to create a new word in the dictionary. She has lots of upcoming projects with her company, so I think I caught her just in time. After you listen to the episode, go check out the Frog in Hand website. All the links are in the description, and you will be updated on all of these new things that are coming out soon. Please join us as we nerd out. Here's episode 15 of season 3. Is that the word?
My brain is like scrolling through word possibilities. I'm like,
That's not the word. That's not a word.
We'll literally stop the podcast and look up word. No.
Hi, Colleen.
Hi, Bri.
How are you doing in this current moment in time?
Wow, that's such a loaded question, but also such a welcome one. I am doing well. Something that I have started saying is I'm hanging in there, because sometimes I feel like getting out of bed at 8 o'clock and I try to do a workout in the morning and then I've accomplished something. So that always makes me feel like trying to feel ready for the day, even if I don't have anything scheduled, you know? So I'm feeling physical. Good. I got a big hike in today. So we went for a 2-hour hike in the woods in the snow. And I don't know how that could not make you feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you have to bring like big... Is it a lot of snow right now in Mississauga?
In Mississauga, there's practically no snow. Okay. But we went out to the Halton region.
Ooh.
We have these hiking books, and that's been, my partner Andrew and I, it's been our COVID strategy since, like, this whole thing started. And I would definitely say since the summer, especially, going on trails and just hiking and getting away. And, you know, you start to get sick of the area around your house because you hike it or you walk it every day. I don't know. That's a kind of thing that has been really great to actually discover what is Ontario's landscape and like see the amazing rocks and caves that we have and like discover the wildlife. We saw a little salamander in the summer.
Aww.
It was so magical. Yeah. So it's been like a longer term project. And also when you have time, you're like, yeah, let's do a 2-hour walk, a 4-hour walk, a 6-hour walk.
You did that once?
We did that once. I was a little too much, I'll be honest.
Yep.
I was like, my legs were done.
Yeah.
But it was a beautiful, bright, sunny day at that point, so it was a lot easier. I'm trying to continue to go outside and not be afraid of the cold or of the winter
Yes.
because it's getting darker sooner, and that's a whole thing, I think, because we were able to dance outside in the summer and be outside more.
Yeah, it's such a shame like that so many things are being canceled, postponed, but then we also like can't use the outside as much. I mean, your company I feel like is so great at site specific and so great at like adapting to the outside. But it's so cold, like it's hard.
It is cold.
It's hard to dance in that.
But it's a kind of a mind over matter thing. I heard this company out in Winnipeg that, I mean, they're not a dance company, but they're a fitness company. And they have this thing of we go out, rain or shine, kind of cold or warm, and they have done workouts in like minus 20.
Wow.
I'm not that gung-ho, but there is a place for it, I think, in terms of just, especially if it's just a walk.
Yeah.
You know? Just literally put on your warmest clothes and continue to go outside. It's even a question of your spine being tall and being able to like stand up and to look into a far distance instead of a close screen or like a wall. Or there's a lot in it that I think is creative without having to be productive, if that makes sense. Because you're just tuning in and listening and observing things. And I've learned a lot of really cool weird knowledge about the Ontario landscape. Like, have you heard of a karst?
No, what is that word? I don't even know.
So it's with a K.
Okay.
It's a type of water-soluble rock. And now I'm on a podcast. I feel like people are going to look this up and I'm going to be getting it wrong. But my memory of it is that the water actually dissolves the rock, so you get these really strange kind of caves and underwater rivers and things. And we went for a karst walk, and there was an area where it literally looked like the raptor's claw had just clawed the ground.
Cool.
And we climbed down into the cracks in the ground.
Whoa.
It was, and this is like a 20-minute, 30-minute drive, you know, like it's not actually all that far.
It's not like it's out in the wilderness, like, you know, like in the northern part of Canada. I guess it's right here. Yeah.
It's kind of in our backyard,
Wow.
but it's not a place that I would have ever had time to explore before, or would have made a point to go out there.
Yeah, I mean, there's something also really needed right now, I think, to be away from four walls. Like, to be in an open space, and maybe, hopefully, like, alone in that open space, I feel like is so precious and rare right now. I don't know. Just having
How does it
you know.
feel? I'm curious because you're in Toronto, right?
Yes, right downtown.
So have you felt a need for that as well, or are the parks out there kind of good enough for you?
Well, this summer I was lucky enough to teach classes, like, outside, and I really loved that so much, and that was kind of like my outdoor time for the summer. Now, again, because it's so cold, I'm really having to brainstorm about where I should go and what kind of paths I want to take when I take my bike or if I walk, because I think I am feeling like, you know, stuck in my house or stuck in my apartment, and I can kind of get used to that and kind of isolate myself and feel comfortable in my, you know, four walls. I feel like I have a good home here, but letting myself leave and open up to the, like you say, the nature of the Canadian Shield and the beauty. I mean, right now it's like a beautiful day, but I'm thinking like, oh, but it's so cold still, you know, or like,
Yes.
I want to stay in or something like that. So I think I am definitely feeling that. I'm right downtown, so it's that city, like, crowded space that I'm feeling.
So the books that I use are called Loops and Lattes,
Oh, okay.
and they're really great because
So they're like,
you can,
like a novel, or?
they're I have 3 of them,
Okay.
and they're all different regions, Caledon, Halton, and the Loops and Lattes guides are literally like, this is where you go, this is where you park, whether there's a fee or not, how long the hike is, and it shows you a map.
Okay.
And it's like insider info because it shows you where the nearest cafe is. So I love coffee, I love
If you
lattes.
need like a pit stop,
so
yeah.
Totally, and it can break it up a little bit,
I'm writing
which
that
is
down.
which is cool. You kind of need a car, I
Ooh,
think,
okay.
which could be a limitation for a lot of people.
Yeah.
But, you might be able to find a way to do it. Or to find one that's like, I actually found one loop that's really close to, like I could walk there from here. So that's cool.
Really cool. Yeah.
The outdoors.
Yeah. Nature at its finest. I mean, we should talk about your company. We should talk about
Sure.
art.
Okay.
Get to actually what this podcast is about. But I mean, so much has happened in the last year for you and this company. I don't even know. Maybe we could start with the summer residency, because I feel like that was the.
For sure.
Or yeah, okay, let's start there. I'm gonna get my brain together.
I can just, in case people don't know, Frog in Hand.
Yes, go for
it. We're a dance theater company. We're based in Port Credit, which is, in Mississauga, just outside of Toronto. We are curious about human nature, and in particular, the spaces we inhabit. Our mission statement, I'm just going to read our mission statement because I like it.
Yeah.
It's to uncover, make, and share stories through dance. But I think we are also known as a multidisciplinary company because we're so collaborative. So we create, we perform, we have education or kind of wisdom exchange as part of what we do.
Yep.
And we are also a site-specific platform for artistic exchange. And our biggest project most recently was the summer company, which is, I think, what you're talking about, the summer. So we did have these 11 artists, I guess, in residence with us, although what that means is kind of a mix of like online and in
it had to be adapted to online, this year?
It started in 2017 with 7 artists, like 7 young, I say young, but really what that means is under 30 because it's a Canada Summer Jobs funding, so they have to be under 30. So first 7, then 8, and this year was 11 people for full-time. It's a full-time job.
Yeah, 8 weeks, 400 hours.
And it went up to 35 hours a week. So it's like, it's a lot of time. And this year we had so many projects. We at first weren't really sure how to do anything because I had a whole planned portfolio of kinds of different work. And we really this year wanted to invite more physical theater performers, of folks who are really actors who have an affinity and a movement practice and an affinity for like storytelling through movement. So we had a good diverse group of people, but we ended up throwing out, essentially like crumpled up and threw out the whole plan that I had.
No.
And the Fringe went online, a Bollywood festival that we were going to be part of.
I saw it,
as a contemporary dance company. Yeah,
Crazy.
we were that went online. We collaborated with a playwright named Sadie Epstein Fine. Clay and Paper Theater. We did this thing called Cyclops, which was just these mobile performance units, and we worked with my sister, who also is a co-founder of Frog in Hand, Noelle Hamlyn. She had this amazing textile piece that we made into a dance film.
Wow.
It was a lot of different kinds of things. And we worked with like improvisation, clown, spoken word. We had some of the performers themselves, or the company members, they got to lead class as well. And it's important too because we had Alice Kavanaugh as the co-artistic director of the summer company, and she's just amazing. And she brought this she's a certified personal trainer.
Okay.
She does stage combat, and she's a physical theater actor, and I've hired her as a dancer because she moves so well. I don't know if she applies that word to herself, but she does things like she trains with fighting monkey technique with Elke Schroeder.
Yes, yeah, so physical.
As a formal mentorship. Yeah, so it's like if you're doing that, then I think there's a lot of dance in it. But she gave us a daily like workout for an hour.
Cool.
At home and then in the park sometimes, which is, tricky to do with a mask, but we found a way.
You have to, yeah.
It's like a lot. It's like a lot when I look at it. I had to think about it. And it just kind of keeps going the more I mention each project, the more I remember. Oh, and yeah, we did like research for a radio play, and everyone created their own audio pieces. It was like kind of an overwhelming amount of work. I'm still sifting through
I bet.
all of the things we created so that I can slowly find ways of sharing it without overwhelming people or myself. You know,
Yes, yeah.
it's like this huge harvest of things we made in such an intense amount of time.
Well, and in such an incredibly difficult year for artists, I think that's so exciting that you were able to keep the flow going and keep things happening. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I think it was really, really exciting. I like my experience as an artistic director is actually like you dream the dream and then you write something or gather your resources, you know, maybe it's a grant, whatever. And then there's a moment of passion of like, yeah, we're going to do this. I don't know. And you submit the grant or whatever it is, the proposal. And then there's like a bit of fear because you don't have control over the outcome. And then I often feel if it's successful, instead of just that moment of like, yeah, we did it. It's like, oh, holy shit. How are we going to do? What did I say we were going to do again? So this was definitely one of those moments with the summer company this year, because it was like the grant people reached out and they were like, can you still do the project that you proposed? Because like the world has changed so much.
Yeah.
And my answer was, of course, we can do more than we said we can do. We can hire more people. Of course we can.
Bring it on,
and then they were like, yeah, you know, and then they were like, great. Here we take 11 people, increase the number of hours. And I was like, yeah,
wow.
Holy shit.
Now
how
we have
do we
to do this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Wow.
that's when we started learning about Mural and Slack and Google Docs and had to find a whole way of like, how do you host rehearsals and like find the... It wasn't so much what are we going to do, it was more like a how are we going to do this?
Right.
Because you have to work so differently, and you can't be on Zoom for 6 hours a day for 5 days a week. Like, and I think that was also the biggest learning curve was trying to think of alternatives to Zoom, and it's something I'm still researching because Zoom is such an efficient platform. Like, we're using it now, but at the same time, just because it is efficient doesn't mean it's the only way to do things.
Yeah.
Like, you know, there are lots of other really interesting platforms out there.
That we
just so you change it up.
yeah, that we have to now incorporate into the process, I guess, because we can't be so much in person, or not the same at least. I wonder too, like with contact and trying to, you know, use contact improvisation or use contact in dance as you're creating, like you can't do that either. And so I feel like that for me definitely has changed the way I choreograph, changed the way I look at bodies, changed the way I train, you know what I mean? Because it's so much on me now. And even though I love a good contact improv class and like feeling
so
shifting
much
weights, you know, but it's not the same.
But how do you feel when you see touch now? Like when you see people dancing and you see contact, how does that like make you feel? I feel so many things when I think about it, because I have seen, you know, you've seen maybe a dance film or like people who live together, who are working together,
because that can happen.
Or maybe it's just people had a protocol where they all got tested and then they could bubble.
In their bubbles, yeah.
But it's just this very complex thing.
Scandalous a bit. It's like,
it definitely
touching, like hand-on-hand contact. Ooh, you know. There's actually like the newest film adaptation of Emma by Jane Austen has an incredible dance movement scene at the ball that they have, you know. And it's very that sense of like delicate touch, and they're not wearing gloves, and of course at that time that would be very scandalous, you know, like
shocking.
Very So I'm watching it, I'm thinking this applies so much to right now. Like I feel touch is such a, you know, it's so rare and it's so beautiful to see people actually come in contact in small ways, of course, but yeah.
It's fascinating because I do a lot of stage combat as well
Right.
with Fight Directors Canada, and that's been, I think, something pretty unique about the work we do is that when we get the opportunity and it's appropriate, we work in stage combat. And stage combat has, because the people I work with are just terrific, like Daniel Levinson and the whole gang over there. They've always been really very, very specific about touch and about safety.
Yes.
And things like one of the very first things we learned was maybe 3 or 4 safe ways of getting down to the floor, falling. And as a dancer, you're like, oh yeah, I could totally do that. And then they pointed out, this is the way you protect your head, your neck, your spine. And I was like, oh damn. Actually, I didn't know that, and I took Aikido for a few years and that's, you're constantly thinking about how to get down to the floor safely. And I think there are a lot of tools in stage combat then when we get back into studios and we can be, even if we're not touching, there's just a whole kind of language around, I'm going to put my hand here and then I'm going to move through and like arrive here. And, just being able to kind of talk about working together, because it's all about partnering, and sometimes you have swords, so you have to be really safe about it. They're not sharp,
Definitely.
but I have been stabbed by them, and they're not fun to be stabbed by. So that's a whole thing. That's a whole other thing. It's like, what are all of the tools that we need now? It's kind of just like, that's why I'm so passionate. I've always been passionate about site-specific performance, but I'm like, now more than ever, it's something that we will need, because we might not be able to work in the theater, black box theater environment, or we will have to work in alternative black box theaters. Like the theaters themselves will have to change their seating or protocols or cleaning. So we have to approach every space we work in a site-specific way anyway now. You can't take it for granted anymore.
No.
What space you're in.
And those skills, that you've garnered or how used in your company in the past now is so important and so needed to change the landscape of art, to keep it progressing forward, to keep people coming to shows, and feeling like they can be safe as well.
That's so important. I mean, even before COVID, it was this idea of creating safe spaces and bringing people into an immersive experience so they feel like they are not only witnessing something happening on a stage or separate from them, but that they were part of it and that they were and are important. Like it wouldn't just be something that happens without them there. I've been to shows before where I was like, oh, you seem to be dancing for yourself. You don't really know that I'm here. But I think in site-specific work, you have to think about what each person sees depending on where they're standing even, like, oh, they're hidden from this place, so they're not going to get any of, that duet. So let's give them this to look at over here, or it'll be magical when they move to this spot. The performer moves to this spot because it'll be like they're revealing themselves because they were hidden over there. Lines of sight and like relating to the audience, looking at them or not, all of this audience. It's not just manipulating the audience, it's audience care. And moving forward, that like even though we have included that and incorporated that into what we do because we want to, because we have to make things work, there's so much more to do. And I think that that's something that I'm really interested in moving forward, is working in public space more and more, not just outdoors, but public spaces. Because you can work site specifically and work in like a rented private building.
Yeah.
But I think we need to be present, we need to be in community, and we need to be visible as artists now so that people have that outlet and that it's normatized and that they can feel like they're participating in it, And that requires actually listening to people. Like we did a town hall with Frog in Hand a few weeks ago, and one of the things that came up again and again that I heard people say was that the arts need to also listen and respond to what many different kinds of communities need right now. Like we can't just, the show can't go on the way it used to, And so even though we have had things that I think are applicable moving forward, I'm still thinking about how can we be really radical in our inclusivity? That's
Yes.
something that Clay and Paper talks about, and create work that is out there for people to not just to see, but like to use somehow. Because I think we need to find ways of helping people be present physically as well.
Yeah.
Because even navigating things like we don't have handshakes anymore, and so how do we and we don't have hugs, and so how do we bring people when it is safe to be back together? Like there's going to need to be a time for working through all of the isolation that we've had and the kind of necessary bubbles that we've put up, but you don't want that bubble to become a shell,
Yeah, like do you think people will be hesitant to explore their physicality or to explore their sense of touch after we get through this?
Wow.
You know what I mean?
I mean, what do you think? I think absolutely.
Yeah. I think especially
it's like when
young
you get an
people.
injury.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you get an injury as a dancer, like, I don't know, especially if it's something like your neck or your back,
Right.
you go to that range of motion and you're like, oh,
It's like, oh.
I'm a little afraid of
Yeah,
that
I
place.
remember
I don't want to
that.
go there.
Mhm.
So there's a certain degree of rehabilitation.
Right.
I think that's a big, maybe that's a word that's too big, but maybe not, because I think it's about, this is a huge loaded word, but safety.
Yeah.
Because making people feel safe is always an ongoing conversation, and it's I laugh because the conversation in my mind just sort of got huge, because it's not just about COVID, it's also about the resurgence of the civil rights movement.
Yes.
And when you're working in site-specific places, it's like it's always political. So you also want to encounter folks where they are at, and that means listening. And the other thing that's important is if people aren't ready, then they're not ready. We don't want to force anything before we're ready.
And everyone, I think, even if we've all been going through a collective experience, there's still an individual experience that every single person is going through. Some people, have not been affected in their work, and it's just been very the same since March. Some people have had no work. Some people have been in and out. So the level of safety that every single person is going to feel is going to be different and varied, I think. How do we know what they need? How do we know what we need? How do we know how to bring it together and meet in the middle, I guess?
It's like when someone at a party asks you, what do you do? It's sometimes like they're asking who you are.
Yes.
So who are we if there is no work? And my parents have recently retired, and they're sort of facing that question. But we are under 30 or just over, in my case. So it's unique to face that question now, and to have everything kind of tumble down means there's an opportunity also. Like, I think there have been a whole bunch of things to see a lot of the opportunities evaporate or collapse. There needs to be a moment of appreciating that loss, because I sort of tried to push past it, and then I was like, no, we need to pause and realize there is a loss.
Have a grief moment.
And feel that loss.
Yeah, and let yourself.
And then you get to ask, what work do I want to do? What's important right now? And then what I'm trying to do, what I'm aspiring to do, is how to reflectively motivate myself from a place of service. And the word service has really been standing out to me right now. So that we stay connected with the bigger picture of society. And we've been given this time to reflect. That doesn't just mean being introspective. It's about, trying to, like you were saying, trying to stay connected as far as we can, and listen to each other. And it's like we used to do this thing at Fresh, remember? It was called What the Space Needs.
Oh, yes.
There was this improvisation where you do what you think the space needs.
I have such good memories of that. And Ignite, too, I think we did a full-on... the year I was at Ignite, we did a full piece around it.
Nice.
And it was at least, I think, 30 minutes. It was long, and we had to, And one of the things I always remember you said was, it's okay to take people out of spaces. It's okay to finish the thought and say, okay, moving on. I remember
or like interrupt.
Yes, exactly.
Because sometimes things last too long.
Yes.
You know?
Oh, that's such a nostalgic
good
memory. Yeah. I'm now that we're thinking of like fresh and like when I was in high school, like working and assisting with you guys as you were teaching, we were in Gatineau. And we did a class, I think it was also on improvisation or composition, I think it was, composition. And we were in Gatineau, and so already there was, a language difference. But we used words, you instructed us to use words that were so phonetically weird or linguistically, up and down and patterning. And it was so fun to explore that and to explore text. And I'm sure you keep working with that as you do, like a radio play or even this writing workshop that Andrew's, hosting.
Yes.
Like it's nice to see dancers or performers in a physical sense use text and use audio. I really love that.
Yeah. And just a little lovely shout out to Kelly Shaw's moment on this.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
When she was talking about voice and feeling like you can use your voice, or talking about moments when you'd feel like you don't have a voice, because I'm just a dancer. Oh my goodness, that resonated with me so much. And
I'm glad to hear that.
I think it's interesting because writing has been a part of my creative process for a long time, and so it's quite aligned for Frog in Hand, aka me, to produce and to welcome a writing class. Like, it's an 8-week writing class where you just get to explore a whole bunch of different genres. And I jumped into the class just to audit it and to be the person in the room if there was technical difficulty, so Andrew wouldn't have to deal with that. And then I just got so into it as a student, because it's like sometimes we have this fear of writing and of the blank page. And so he would start off with this prompt, and every class there would be a different prompt for stream of consciousness. So it's just like, write for 2 minutes about what you see in this picture. Okay, next picture, 2 more minutes, write about this. And then, that things would progress from there. But it was kind of just about open the gates, like find a place for the words, and then you could share if you wanted to, or you could throw that away. Because that's the other unique thing that we don't get the opportunity to do when everything is so product driven, is to throw things away. And like, you don't have to ever come back to that if you don't want to. You have the opportunity to make mistakes without there being a cost to it. Because sometimes when you're in a creative process, you're like, well, we only have 20 hours and we have to figure this out by the end of it. Versus it being, for me, I wrote a script, and it was with Andrew's support and Callahan. We would just meet and very much like the writing class, we just started with prompts, and then all of a sudden we had something, and then we got to rehearse it, and then we recorded it, and now, I've done my first radio play, which is amazing. Wow. So it's so cool because it's not going to come out until 2021, because it has to go through post-production, which means like sound effects are going to be put on it, and Foley, and I have no idea. We have someone who's Mickey is going to do all of that.
Wow.
He's a sound artist, and when I called him for this, he was like, "Oh my gosh, yes, I'll fit you in." Because so many people are doing radio plays and stuff.
He must be in high demand for sure.
But it's going to be really fun. And I got to act in it as well. Cool. So it's so different being a dancer and being in this time and being able to write and do voice acting. And like, my ultimate goal for that radio play is to dance to it. So to take all of the radio, soundtrack and take different scenes from it and find a way to physicalize it and dance to it live, hopefully one day. But we'll see what happens with that.
That's so cool. Well, I think by the time this podcast comes out, maybe the radio play will be ready, but I'm so excited to hear that. That's so cool. And it's interesting that you want to go from an audio to a physical by, by adding a movement piece to it when it started as just a text or audio thing. That's cool. Huh.
Yeah, it was inspired by War of the Worlds. Have you heard the like Orson Welles, 1938, I think, War of the Worlds?
I know Orson Welles from English class. I don't know if I've seen
Nice.
The War of the Worlds, though.
So there was a terrible, in my opinion, terrible movie made with, like really recently, Steven Spielberg sort of, not great. And the book is good, but not super accessible. But the radio play of Orson Welles' War of the Worlds is like still to this day one of the best radio plays. And have you heard the legend of what happened with it?
No.
Okay, so
Catch me up.
I'm gonna get super nerdy and excited.
Colleen,
Our
I'm a
radio
huge
play.
nerd. I love this. Go for it.
Yay! Our radio play was inspired by War of the Worlds, which is just one of the reasons why, like, we wanted to do our own spin on it, because I heard this Orson Welles radio play, and you have to, I mean, I always have to remember when I think about this that it was like kind of wartime, right? So a lot of people used to listen to the radio, and War of the Worlds is about Martians attacking, right? It's about aliens from Mars landing on planet Earth and killing everyone, and the army trying to deal with it, but they can't. Like, it's really, really powerful. And so the way that Orson Welles and his team like adapted this for radio is by making a series of pretty much real-time broadcasts. So it feels like you're in the moment. Wow. So essentially it starts with this monologue, and then it drops into like an interview with a scientist because there have been these mysterious explosions on Mars, and then you like interview someone who saw this capsule land in a farmer's field. So you like talk to the farmer, and then there's this live, oh my God, this amazing moment where you have this journalist out in the field, and he's describing what he's seeing as these like tentacles unfold from the pit, and this creature climbs out, and he's like, I'm going to stay with you for as long as I can. There's a sudden leap of flame. It's coming in my direction. It's 30, it's 20, and he cuts out, and you're like, shit, what happened? And the rest of it is like that. Like, you tune into the military as they try to deal with this attack, and it's like you get these military announcers and commanders who are like, we are taking over the public radio because we want to keep the populace informed, but also as a way to communicate with people and let everyone know what's happening. With it, we are now in this city, and so on. And it unfolds through, I think it is compressed time, but it really feels real time. To the extent that you have these amazing scenes, like someone standing on the top of a building watching black smoke billow into the city, and then they're describing how it's getting closer and closer and closer, and then they start coughing. You can hear it, and then their body falls, but it's still recording, right? So you still have that. So we were so inspired by that feeling and by that experience, because I mean, this is what War of the Worlds is known for, is that like the aliens eventually die, but they die of the cold. Like, they die because they can't deal with the bacteria and so on here on Earth. And we were gonna do this ages ago, like 2 years or so ago, and there was this moment of, whenever I pick a theme or something, I have this wonderful conversation with people in Frog in Hand, and, people are like, why now? Why does this story need to be told? And at the time I was like, because it's really cool, and I like science fiction, and I really like aliens, and this would be really awesome, and Orson Welles is cool, and doing something like that would be great. And now with the pandemic and the post-pandemic world, it's taken on a whole new meaning, and it's way more relevant, I think, than it would have been. The whole idea of trying to fight the unknown. And so we've taken War of the Worlds for this radio play, and we've set it like in Ontario, and my scenes that I wrote are all about the our version of the aliens attacking Toronto.
Whoa.
Which has been wild to imagine, you know.
And to have that audio experience, I think, while you're in Toronto would be really interesting, you know?
Wow.
Yeah. To Good Flight was like listening to it and walking down, you know, College Street.
Wow, yeah.
And then I hear a boom in my right ear. And I feel like that would just transform the, you know, my landscape of where I'm walking.
But you must, because you have this podcast, you must
do.
think about this as a medium so
Oh my
much.
gosh, yeah.
Like, why did you choose, I'm just curious, also as a listener of the show, why you chose podcast as a medium rather than like a video blog or something like that?
That's such a great question, something I've definitely thought about. I don't like to take up people's time. I don't like to, you know, demand that they watch, because they can't always do that. Most people that I'm around in my community of friends or whatever listen to things on the go, or listen to them as they're doing chores or dishes. And if I can bring, you know, an escapism aspect to those mundane tasks through an audio experience, then I'll feel like I've upped the game a little bit, even if it's just a little bit. And I always loved podcasts for that reason too, is that I could just put it on. I could tune out, I could tune in. Like, it's so accessible, it's free. It's, you know, I mean, not always, but most of the time. You know, yeah, like I became obsessed with podcasts when I was working a lot and having to commute a lot, and you know, wanting to theatricalize. That's not a word.
It is
it a
now.
word?
Theatricalize. It is now.
Oh, you're such a linguist. I love it. Theatricalize my mundane commute. Is that the word?
My brain is like scrolling through word possibilities. I'm like,
That's not the word. That's not a word.
We'll literally stop the podcast and look up word. No, you'll remember as soon as we finish. Probably.
Yes, I will. But
no,
to
but
answer your question,
theatricalize is very expressive, and I totally understand what you're saying.
Thank you.
Because there is such a flavor to each voice, and it's been fascinating trying to convey a character just through your voice. As a dancer, you're like, and I would actually say it's pretty similar to dancing. The writing part was writing a script for radio was really odd, because I found that I kept going back and cutting stuff out, or saying like, I don't need that extra word because I can just describe it, how this character is feeling through my voice, so I can get the quality. Like, for instance, you wouldn't need to say, I don't know what's down there, I feel really nervous. You could just be like, I don't know what's down there, and say it in a way that's super nervous.
Right.
Then you don't need that extra piece. But it's like taking all of that and thinking about how the character is moving, what they're seeing, is there effort in their voice, you know? But I think there's a lot that's conveyed through the tone and the quality, and something that really draws me into podcasts is the way we are when we listen to them. Like, I enjoy the idea that I don't have to speak. I can just sit and listen to a conversation. Yes, the podcast, the episodes of this show that I've heard have been really lovely for that reason, because it feels like catching up with the dance community, catching up with friends, but I don't have to say anything. I can just witness.
Totally.
And I like that. Like, I think practicing your listening, especially for me, because sometimes I feel like I talk too much. Practicing your listening is a good thing,
Totally.
you know?
Yes, and knowing that you don't always have to input or be an active speaker in a conversation. You can also just listen and sit back, and you learn so much from listening too, I think. And yeah, podcasts are great. It's funny that it's basically radio. Like, it's basically radio, right?
Yeah.
It's old-fashioned radio, except now you can press play and pause and fast forward, but it's basically like an old-timey medium, I find.
But it's not visual, and yet it is so visual, because audio creates a picture in your mind's eye in a way that video doesn't. And it's so cool to see how we are coming back to this form of like the audio experience, because we're so bombarded, and there are so many like amazing TV shows out there, and I love YouTube, and there's so many dance films and stuff, but while the dance films and the Zoom dances and the digital dances and like those experiences are really wonderful, and I've made like one of each of those, I do feel like there's something about just audio that is liberating, in a way.
And it lets people who are listening, the consumers, draw their own pictures and use their own imagination on, what I look like or what you look like, or where we are in our spaces. You're in a closet right now, but I'm sure people
I am in a
know
closet.
That,
They wouldn't know that. It's actually hilarious, because when we were recording our radio play, I got each person to take a photo, because the setups were hilarious. Some people were fully in a closet with the closed door. For people who can't see, I just sort of opened my closet, and I have a couple of like, you're supposed to have soft things around you so that it absorbs the sound.
Blankets, yeah.
And so they were like, literally build a blanket house, and that'll be that. So the setups were just hilarious, and each person was different, and then you like fit all this technology in your closet. But apparently, just like me, just like us right now, a lot of people in like CBC and so on, and Indie 88, like these professional radio hosts, are doing the same thing. They're like broadcasting from their closets. And I wonder what that looks like, if they have to have even more technology, or if it's kind of DIY.
The work from home studio now is so normal, I guess.
But imagine doing this and like broadcasting it through a national radio.
Right?
The idea of actually broadcasting. And we are broadcasting, but it's just a different process.
Yes,
It's so cool.
Gosh, I feel like we're nerding out about podcasts. I want to talk about more of your projects.
Let's do it.
I mean, even, let's go back a little bit to, you worked with these 11 artists over the summer, and you have, you were able to create a performance called Distance Dances.
Yeah, we were.
And it was successful. Like, it worked.
It was successful.
Yeah.
What it was we had the 11 people, each of them got to invite one person or so to watch, and they came, and we did it in a field at the Small Arms building right by the water tower. So
great location.
It was a really beautiful experience, because we brought a whole bunch of little flashlights, and like the audience sat outside and socially distant on their little like blankets and so on. And Callahan Connor came and worked with us. He's worked with us a lot, and he coached us into making our own score, like improvised sound score. And then we created partnerships so that there were a whole series of duets that were score-based improvisation, as everyone else responded through music. And really, with Distance Dances, it was about that moment. It was about really performing in person for a live audience, even though it was really, really intimate, and it was like a small moment in a big field kind of thing. Actually, as we were setting up, we were getting ready, these two cops on bikes pulled up, and I was like, I'm gonna talk to them, because I'm okay, I don't feel like it, but I will. And I walked over to them, and I was like, hey, we're just doing like a private event here. It's just a little dance thing. And they were like, well, we don't care. That's fine. That's awesome.
Okay, good.
Is it starting now? And I was like, yeah, do you want to watch? They were like, sure, we'll watch for a bit.
Oh, nice.
Like, they did not mind at all, but it's just kind of puts you to the state of mind of, we really felt like, I knew that we were doing everything correctly, because we had, we were under the number of people, well under, you were supposed to be at that time like gatherings of under 100. You know, we were well under the number. We had hand sanitizer, we had lights, we had like everything was very safe. But I just felt kind of like when I saw them, there was this moment of, oh my gosh. But it was beautiful, and Kendra Epic recorded it. So I got a series, and Drew Barry was in the company, so she also did some filming. And I'm going to release, this is what I mean, I was bombarded by, like, we just created so much material, and now I get to go back and grab that audio and the video, and I think I'm going to release a series of small videos of each of those duets, so people can see it if they weren't there. But I realized in the moment back in the summer that what we needed at that time was just a live performance experience.
In person,
And to be in person as a way of like a closing ceremony for all the work that we had done together. And you know, when you've worked on something for a long time with a group of people, there's always this moment of like, oh, we don't know when we'll see you again. So it was a very precious closing ceremony. And we got it on film, so yeah, we'll share little bits of it.
Hey. Okay. And then you also are launching a workshop series in February, you know, taught by you, which is like a dance improvisational course.
Yes.
Very cool. Very cool.
I decided to do that because I know that we're dancing in our houses a lot of the time now. I mean, at the time of recording this, Mississauga is in lockdown and Toronto as well. Yeah. And we don't know what the future holds, but I have this desire to keep dancing, but to dance in a way that acknowledges kind of where we are without pretending that it's a studio. Because if you can't be in a studio, sometimes you're like, oh, well, I can't maybe dance. And it's like, you can't do what you used to be able to do because a full jump, like grand jeté sequence isn't really dangerous in the cards right now. But there's something about saying you do have the unique opportunity to dance in a way that connects to your, maybe it's your home, maybe it's wherever you are, and you don't need a studio. So I'm interested in improvisation because I think that we can still be super physical. We can do things through a Zoom platform, but as a way of, I think the improv classes and the site-specific infused improv classes that I like to lead and that I've led through Zoom have been really successful. I think people have felt like they got something out of it. I mean, that's the feedback that I got. So I thought I would open that up to like the professional dance community because, there's something about, I took a lot of Gaga classes in my living room at the beginning of, March, and it was awesome. Like, it was a really great chance to just move as big or small as I needed to and still feel connected to my body and to explore sensation and to feel virtuosic in a totally new way while being careful of like the lamps around me and so on.
That language is, Gaga is so liberating in that sense, that it can be so broad and doesn't have to come from copying a teacher. It can be very much your own experience in your space. I even think about you led the kitchen dances workshops, which was so great because I'm in my kitchen and I'm thinking I don't have a lot of space here, but I can still make something happen, or I can still make something happen inside of me, in my body, to feel something.
We had fun with that because we were like, well, if you are actually in your kitchen, like, let's do an improv class that is inspired by the flavors you find here. Like, go now and find 3 different flavors and we're going to dance.
You can't do that in a studio.
You can't. And that's the thing that I kind of want to be realistic, because there is joy in those kinds of discoveries. And again, there is still loss because, you wanted to do your grand jeté or whatever it was. Yeah. It's kind of about this balance of like acknowledging just where we're at each. Sometimes it's at each day, sometimes it's moment by moment. But I like improvisation because it gives us the opportunity to meet each other where we are at in any given moment. So you kind of do the well, the class is going to be structured like you do a physical warm-up and tuning in, and then we are going to explore scores. I know that Gaga is really well known as like an improvised movement form, but there are lots of other kinds of techniques and people who have really inspired and influenced me, and even things like you were talking about, how do we do contact improvisation if we can't touch? I did a this was in 2013, I think. I did a 3-week residency about contact improv without touch. Like what does it mean to do distant touch?
Wow, really?
Yeah. So we'll explore some of those things, because you can kind of partner, but it'll be different. But that kind of work has really inspired. Just like, to give a concrete example, it could be like the way that I am moving one of my body parts is just imaginary. There's an imaginary kind of elastic connected to one of your body parts. And you can do that, again, not necessarily with another person. You could do that with points of space in your room. So there's still ways of, and even Forsyth is really great in terms of the tools that he has offered, and connecting that to architecture. There's like a lot of cool stuff that we can still do that can be really rich and creative. And
cool.
And I'm inspired by Andrew's writing class, because it's like, try this, try this, try this. Hold on tightly to the stuff that you find that is great. Let go loosely, you know, just drop the stuff that's not working. And what if it wasn't so heavy? Like, what if we were just doing this for the sake of doing it? Because that's the thing I've noticed, is sometimes it's important to do the art thing just for the sake of continuing to do the art thing, whatever that means at whatever day.
Yes to that. Yeah. It can have meaning, but it can also just have pleasure and a sense of we're in it right now, in this current moment.
A lot of these grants have been hilarious, because they're asking this question of like, and how will this project that you are proposing support the arts community? And I'm like, by being a project.
I'm gonna say, like, well, because it's a thing that it now can be in the repertoire of arts, and
by continuing, just by continuing to work in whatever that means, in whatever loose way, just by continuing to work, it's an accomplishment of some kind, or it supports the community. You know? That's been really interesting.
Going like a little full circle, just to finish off, because we're almost done, but on your website, and when you talk about the creation of Frog in Hand, and like especially that phrase frog in hand, like what does that even mean, right? You talked about you and your sister playing with frogs as you were younger, and you wrote, art begins from a humble place, and sort of a place of childish wonder and imagination. And I really resonated with that when I was reading it. I thought, well, of course it has to be, it has to come from the person's life experiences, and that starts from when they were young. And so, I just wanted to point that out as something that I think connects to what we're saying, is that it is what it is, and it's being created, whatever this piece of art is, it's being created because an artist has a need to do it and a want to do it, and the community also wants it as well.
I'm so glad that resonated with you. I think the idea of being humble is so expansive, because there's a humbleness to the art form and what it can do and what it is. And it's fascinating, because what is it right now? If, let's just say for a second that you can't put on a show or go to class or be with other people, what is dancing? And what if we're okay with that? But what if we're okay with that for a second, and we breathe with that knowledge, and we just pause? What if it is just so deep in our bones and our bodies that it's going to be there with us in this moment, and we can hold space with that idea, and we can know that the dancing is still with us and it's present, and that rather than being, I mean, yes, there is a sense of loss. Again, I keep saying that because you have to acknowledge it, but there's also this amazing opportunity to really think about what dancing is and what was dancing before there was dancing before there was a stage. People danced before we had tickets to sell. We would dance even if there was no money. We dance even though there is no money. You know, we dance anywhere and everywhere because we're humans, and that's a thing that humans do. To meet other people and to recognize our humanity and to assert our identity and to be curious and to explore and to push forward and to cry and to have cathartic moments and to explore the unknown and the unknowable. And all of that stuff has nothing to do with the product that we are told we have to sell or jumping higher than the person next to us. It doesn't have to do with any of that fucking stuff, because it's just in us. It was in me in the backyard when I used to make shows, you know, with my sister in the puddles, like, and that's what Frog in Hand was and is. And I think because that's what I believe the arts are. And it's not even like we have these amazing tools to move forward and to offer ourselves and each other. And it's like, you don't want to put too much pressure on the arts community and say, like, you're going to solve everything and you're going to help people come to terms with all of the loss. But at the same time, if that's the work that we want to do, we have the tools to do it. And I've personally been feeling sometimes crushed by the situation, but then alternatively alive, because there's just this assertion that the arts are necessary and that they have so much more to offer than I even dreamed of. So much more to offer. Because here's a genuine crisis in our lifetime that we're facing, and it's really hard and it's so scary and it's, you know, anxiety provoking. And there are multiple crises, you know, crises. But there's still that, like, that deep knowing that the dancing, like, as long as we are embodied and in our bodies and breathing and existing, the dance goes on just because it's there, like, it's there. I just love this notion that if you put aside all of the capitalism and the need to sell a product and, like, the competition, and, like, a lot of people in the community have been offering resources and thoughtful ways of training, or it's like well-being and connectedness, and we see immediately, like, what is important. What is important. And you know what's important. We don't have to think too hard about it. It's in us. So it's in us. It's simple, and you just, like, kind of look down that well and you see your own reflection and the dance goes on. Like, that's just it. I love that idea. I know it's super hard every day to be like, who am I and what's happening? And then you're like, what does it mean to practice dance and to be a dancer or to be an artist right now? What can that be? It can be what we need it to be. What do we need it to be?
Yes.
There's a kind of a liberation in that, even though it can feel heavy, you know?
I don't even have anything to say. I think you said it right there. And thank you for ending this podcast on such a, you know, reflective note, and hopefully the conversation can continue from here. Wow.
Thank you so much for having me and for making space for people to share their stories and their thoughts with you, and for being such a great listener. I really love this podcast, and I think you're doing something really important here. So I'm a huge fan, and I'll keep listening as this goes on.
It's my absolute pleasure. Thank you for making time. I know you're busy with all these projects and editing, and so just sitting with you for an hour and picking your brain is so enjoyable for me, as I've done so many years. You know, it's really great.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I did want to give you an opportunity to plug anything quickly, or anything that you've got going on, maybe even in your personal life, not just in Frog in Hand, and the mic is yours. Go for it.
Wow. Because I'm not sure when this podcast is going to be released, and we don't need to put any pressure on that, I would say if you haven't yet, check out the Frog in Hand website, because we're offering a lot of different kinds of experiences. Some of them are sign-up workshops and classes, but we're also going to be releasing a YouTube series of free site-specific classes and dance theater classes. And again, we're just editing those. And we have a whole bunch of beautiful audio dances and audio walks that you can just, again, they're free. You can put on your headphones and just go for a walk with us, or some of them are guided dance improvisations. So we have a bunch of free content, and we've been doing, grant writing workshops, and I want to do grant writing clinics because I know a lot of people are thinking about self-producing their work right now, or coming up with ways of keeping their work going. And so those are certain things that we're doing. And obviously we're at Frog in Hand on Instagram. And reach out if you have a thought or a question or something that you need. We've got a mailing list and all that cool stuff, but
I will.
I'm excited to see what happens next over the next few months. We're gonna and in 2021, it's exciting. New year.
It's already coming. Oh my gosh.
We're gonna have lots of different kinds of free and like low cost experiences and so on. Okay. And I'm hoping I can do something where I share some cocktail recipes too.
Oh, yes.
I
saw that you were posting some of that over the summer. That's so fun. Great.
It's a huge hobby of mine. I really enjoy. So
okay, well, I'll link all of those links below in the description. And Colleen, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
All right, I'm going to stop the recording. Thank you so much for listening to the Art Versations podcast. If you like what you heard, the best way to help the podcast is to subscribe or follow on your preferred podcast platform and leave a review. As well, follow the podcast on Instagram at artversationspod. You'll find photos of each of my guests so you can match a voice to a face, and highlight clips from each episode. Let's keep the conversation going. Send in a DM with your own thoughts about art, as well as any questions you think I should ask my guests. The podcast community continues to grow, and that is all because of you, listener. All bodies are dancer bodies, and all lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter. Till next time.
My name is Broadway Classic.
Let's hear it.